Sources tell CBS News Iran's retaliation was expected and calibrated. Now, we're learning U.S. officials held meetings this weekend and this morning to prepare for an attack on the U.S. airbase in Qatar. So let's bring in CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, what do we know about the U.S. and its preparation for this attack? Clearly, how is it perceiving this retaliation also?
Well, Jules, just a few moments ago, the president himself on Truth Social laid out some of the details in his reaction to tonight's attacks on the U.S. military base there in Qatar. Writing on Truth Social, Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with what he calls a very weak response, which we expected and had very effectively countered. He says there have been 14 missiles fired by Iran. 13 were knocked down, and one was set free because it was headed in a non-threatening direction. He adds, I'm pleased to report that no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage was done. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system. And there will hopefully be no further hate, he says. I want to thank Iran for giving us, this is important, early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. He adds in a subsequent Truth Social, congratulations, world. It's time for peace. So what the president, at least right now...
It's been time for peace. It's not time for peace after you go slap somebody upside the head or put them in a position that could have triggered World War III. And now it's time for peace because you aggressed and their response was appropriate. It made you not feel threatened. You felt completely in control. And you go beyond just dealing with it on an international basis where we can get some kind of relationship going with Iran and not necessarily be allies, but be respectable adversaries where we understand the lines that shouldn't be crossed. And if they're working with you to make it easy and you want to put them on blast, clown them that thanks for the heads up and that, you know, we knew it was coming and it was a mild response just to save face. But what we're doing is trying to do the same thing, save face. Can anybody look back now? These things go in history books. How do we explain Israel's aggression toward Iran historically? The United States getting involved, dropping bombs, declaring that they obliterated Iran's nuclear program. But there's no nuclear fallout. There's no radiation seeping all over the place. There's no people being affected or dying or hospitals full with a bunch of folks who've been exposed. Well, how do you destroy the centrifuges and all of those things that are required to make these military grade weapons that are supposed to be there? But all the death or any destruction has been caused by Israel and the United States missiles and airplane attacks and I guess submarine attacks. Where is the nuclear infrastructure? Where are the weapons? Where's what we should have enough information just by our targeted attacks to know that we damaged the nuclear program because we see evidence in the atmosphere of it. And either we didn't hit the correct spots, meaning we have horrible intelligence and so does Israel, or we did hit the right spots and there truly isn't a nuclear threat there. And there has been that same cry from Israel since 1979 to do this. They got nuclear weapons. They got nuclear weapons. They're going to try to wipe us off the face of earth. Iran even said it. Rhetoric is dangerous. Listen to some of the things that our leaders and our current leader says and has said. So rhetoric is dangerous. But when other countries have rhetoric or say things, it's like they meant it and they're going to see it through. But we have made some threats and some really erroneous comments internationally and on the world stage and gotten away with it and not been held to account or held to explain, did you really mean, when you said Sometimes it's a luxury changing presidents every 4 years or every 8 years if he's elected again. But it doesn't excuse you from your position of responsibility to get on the world stage and talk with good sense and not make threats. And Iran has said some things they probably shouldn't have said, but intelligence should have showed us that they didn't have any nuclear capabilities. They were currently, as of a 24-hour period when the talks ended, and Iran wasn't aware that meant they were going to be struck or we were going to go to war. Even if that's a veiled threat, it's nothing that they really probably thought would happen because there was no reason. And if they don't have military grade, that's the thing that we can't ignore. We can't say we just let Israel go and strike in a country based on their word, like we went in and did the Iraq thing under the same, it sounds identical. How do you allow a country to do that, then draw the United States in to do their part of the attack, and then we just glad that Iran is, and Russia and China and any other allies or business partners in the world that they might have is calm and cool enough to not retaliate, to not strike back in kind, to not pull out those nuclear weapons that Israel promised us they have. Now the reason that they are not attacking back with nuclear weaponry and planet-ending technology is because the preemptive strikes and the strike of the United States wiped out any capability. And if they were as armed and had been enriching uranium, there's no way that we would have been able to clear it out, wipe it clean in this short amount of time. 10 days, 11 days of striking doesn't add up. I'm believing, just based on the physical evidence of there not being presence of radiation in those areas, and they have had reports that there are no reports of radiation. Can anybody please explain what that was all about? Israel wanted to attack Iran more than that in the past, and our presidents stopped it, stifled it, shut it down, and didn't let it happen. Let Israel know, I know what you want to do, but if you do, it is not going to be a good thing for you. We ain't backing it up. You may end up in the middle of a fire if you do this. And knowing that they didn't have the United States backing, it's held them off since 1979. And Donald Trump should be ashamed of himself to have let Netanyahu allow it to get to this, because now Trump knows he messed up. But you don't go dropping bunker busting bombs on countries and then realize you messed up. Our history, in the recent history with the Iraq situation, we should not want to do anything that even closely resembles that. And we go and do something that's almost identical to that. We should be trying to stay away from that look. It's not a good look. And we're doing it again. And this time, instead of being lied to by the intelligence community or being tricked by senators and congressional folk, it's another government. It's an ally, but another government who has led us down this path. And I believe Trump wants to slam the brakes on this. And if Iran isn't willing to play its part and allow this to come to a screeching halt, and now everybody's racing to get back to the table. There was talk of Iran being willing and wishing to come back to the table prior to being struck by Israel. And in the early stages of Israel striking them, they were still saying, hey, we need to talk. Can we get back to the table? And Trump was like, nope. Now you want to beg. And it's like, people are in jeopardy of dying. They are a country that is going to have to retaliate on being attacked like this. And Trump is saying, no, we asked you to now. And it's like, who does that? Then they do their little part. And now it's like, now we need to go back to the table. You got all the leverage in the world. The United States doesn't have to drop a bomb to display and for other people to be conscious of what kind of leverage they have. So what was that all about? Well, were we trying to test out our military might? Were we trying to flex our muscle as if we haven't done that already enough times that everybody on the planet understands what the United States is when you come up on the wrong side of them? It's a sad, sad place. And to think that we elect people and they get in office and turn around and lie to us, all of them. The Republicans and the Democrats, nobody can say that Donald Trump didn't lie to get on. If you liked Donald Trump because he appeared to be the fiscally responsible man who was going to have the deficit going in the other direction instead of up, well, he should have lost you by now. That's where he lost me. If he's the guy who you thought was the anti-war president, who it would take us possibly or one of our very close allies being attacked or imminently about to be attacked. And that went out the window too. How could you continue to support as it gets to that point where they're no different than the other team, which means the American public has to pick differently. We are all responsible for putting these people in office. And then we fight amongst each other because one side chose an idiot over another idiot. So they're complaining that, okay, we'll concede he's the idiot. If you concede that's the idiot. No, he ain't as dumb as that idiot. Well, now who's the most idiot? I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a coin toss.
Signaling perhaps is, we did what we did over the weekend. Iran has now responded in kind. Let's leave it at that and try to move on or try to get back to the negotiating table. And he confirms a few details there. One, he says Iran gave someone a heads up that this was happening, so the United States was prepared. Two, the number of missiles, we had heard some of that, similar figures, about 14 of them, most missing the airbase. And then the fact that no Americans were killed. We did not have specific casualty figures yet, but we know now that, yes, over the weekend and into this morning, the president, his team, were anticipating and preparing for this kind of retaliatory strike. You heard the Speaker of the House a little while ago say he got a classified briefing this morning where the possibility of this was raised. And the early indications came when Qatar closed its airspace earlier today. That was a signal that they were anticipating something happening that could have potentially been far worse, but at least for now, based on what the president is saying, 14 missiles, no American injuries, and in his view, in his hope, the world can move on.
Yeah, the latest.
When you bomb another country and you get to pick the intensity of that fight, how hard you're going to go, how much damage you're going to cause if you choose to include human life, all of that. It's at your discretion. And then after you do that, standing up and looking like they're a country that their people want to be a part of, that we're not just going to be getting slapped. So with that being said, what would make the United States do that to a country unless there is really, really, really good intelligence that Israel or any of our other allies or ourselves, or we have assets in those regions, are in imminent danger. And if we proceed as we already have, and I cannot say this enough, if we don't go back after those skirmish is over and do some fact checking and call Netanyahu out, and as America, as citizens of the United States, if this man is committing war crimes, his work down in Gaza needs to be relooked at too. Because if we had listened to him then, we'd have been all caught up in that as well. And I believe that he basically got Trump caught in a bad place, probably yelling and screaming out too much rhetoric, and then feeling some way that he had to live up to it, because I cannot even imagine why we're where we are right now in the Middle East. That didn't have to happen. It hadn't happened up to this point. Very, very unfortunate. There were times when people in the United States were even saying things like the United States appears to be abandoning Israel and leaving them, for dead out there. And that's just people who expect way too much. The United States is a very good and solid partner for Israel in that region, and makes Israel's existence in that region a whole lot more relaxing and calm and certain than a lot of people who have lived in those regions for thousands of years. And they have to, their way of being in that particular part of the world has to be altered because of a small country there being backed up by a huge giant who obviously will attack. And had Iran lost it, they're not gonna lose it. They're not gonna go overboard. They're not gonna kill a bunch of Americans or a bunch of Jewish people from Israel, because if they do, it could be the end of them. And no matter how much damage we cause, no matter how many lives get lost, the response is not going to be as great as our attack, as our initial strikes anywhere on this planet. Is going to be very hard to match that, if possible at all. And to believe that Iran was in a place, and I don't mean capable militarily, but in a place in their heart, in their minds, to really try to get Israel wiped off the face of the earth under the current circumstances. They're ready to do a suicidal attack on Israel, knowing if Iran had attacked first in the same way Israel attacked them, we would definitely not have the same regime, and most of the country would just have been decimated. And I would hope that hadn't went to World War III, but that would have been a horrible thing, because everything that Israel and the United States have been saying over these decades about Iran would have been coming true. But up to this point, none of that rhetoric is coming true. And it's a very difficult thing to accept and support a country and a country's ally who appears to have been exaggerating and embellishing what the truth is. When the president of a country goes against his own intelligence community, which is where he should be getting his information from primarily, and it leads to bombs being dropped, that's the time when the president doesn't get to make those orders. If he can go to our Congress and let them know that him and Tulsi Gabbard and any other cabinet or department heads have been given the same information but come up with different conclusions, that makes sense. But if he's getting his information from somewhere else or being influenced somewhere else, then, what are we doing here as United States citizens? Allowing a president who is openly and on the news saying that those people don't know what they're talking about. And and by him saying that, and it can be proven, the bombs have been dropped. The nuclear facilities are supposedly decimated and shut down. Now, who is going to go in there, and who is going to come out of there as journalists, investigative journalists, and tell us that we were lied to again, and tell us that the United States and Israel are more capable of that kind of warfare, that kind of attack on another country that hasn't attacked them, than the country that they have most of us believing is the devil, is the enemy, is religiously driven to kill Americans just because they're Americans, no other reason. That's a brainwashing, folks. That's just brainwashing.
Information, Ed. Thank you. Also, President Trump says the Iranian nuclear sites hit by U.S. strikes were totally destroyed. Can we be certain that all of Iran's enriched uranium was at those sites when the strikes hit?
We cannot. And unless or until there is independent verification of that, which there may never be, it's going to be difficult to know for certain. And he's not happy about it. He's already blaming reporters or media outlets for suggesting.
They'll let a few years go by, and then they'll start saying either Iran replenished what the United States and Israel destroyed, or they'll either say this stuff was moved ahead of the strikes, depending on when they decide to start this up again. If it's real soon, they're going to say it was moved. We missed the golden opportunity. The United States didn't act quick enough. We told them it could be one day. We've been dealing with this since 1979, and Netanyahu convinced Trump that we was down to hours. It could happen in hours. And we all as adults and grown folks who lived a little bit of life on this planet should know better than to be falling for this from anybody. It's a disgrace. And the worst part is the folks who are supposed to be they evacuated. They didn't stay in Tehran and try to go down with the city and have some kind of secret plan. I mean, just think about it. All I heard about was sleeper cells from Iran and a possible bomb being launched toward America. I mean, the worst of the worst, none of that happened. In fact, it's according to Donald Trump, it's as if they picked up the phone or sent him an email and said, hey, look, we're going to launch a couple back, and this is where they're going to be going, and it's going to be probably between, these hours, and, make sure all the guys are, they make it. Now, these are the people who the last time he was in front of us talking was the devil. And now they're sending emails and letting you know, we're just sending this strike back to save face. We ain't really trying to hurt nobody. Knock these missiles down, and then we can start dialing it down and basically get back to the table. Where none of these missiles, none of this destruction, none of these people in Israel who have died had to die. All we had to do was wait a couple of days and schedule some more talks. And if Israel and the United States didn't attack, it's pretty unlikely looking now that Iran was prepared to talk. What has gotten Iran to attack? I'm sorry. What would make Iran want to just jump? What is going on in this moment? The only thing that's changed is the president of the United States. We went from Biden to Trump. So how does that change anything with Israel, with Iran attacking them? It doesn't. It just changed Israel's opportunity to attack Iran, unfortunately. And that's a sad thing. They Netanyahu, or as they call him, BeBe. It just seems so affectionate. And I think that he has no love for us. He has no love for us. All they care about is the country, Israel, and what they got to do that's going to help their lives be better than everybody else's in the world. And the little bit of money we give them for military ain't enough. It's never enough. And if we let Netanyahu, based on his feelings, intelligence, thoughts, and beliefs, guide what Israel did militarily with the guarantee that we would support it 100%, it would already have been World War III, IV, maybe even V by now, if there's a planet left to blow anything up in. And I cannot understand why someone who has or is a part of the group that went through what happened in World War II and would want to see that on anybody. Why would you want to put that out there in the world coming from some people who have had it done to them? Just a disaster. And to think that you would have that type of a heart, you think that you would be on the, you know what? If the world is that devilish and the people are that aggressive, you'd rather, not be the one responsible for mass deaths and mass casualties and endless wars when all you have to do is stop fighting your opponent and just stop. If he can't physically attack you or let the physical contact between you, the aggression go, let it go away. And the side that we are on as Americans and with a lot of our allies in the world, we are aggressing. Ukraine is not or was not a part of Russia. They might end up being if they keep it up, and not a part of the UN. And they made aggressive steps to go toward the UN. They might have had a better chance of being a neutral country with some treaties signed to just let those guys over there with Putin know we ain't gonna try to do nothing that's gonna threaten you, and we're not gonna give the UN and its allies an unfair advantage by using our land and airspace to attack you. And that's not that unreasonable. What is Ukraine really trying to do? Really attack Russia? Really get the United States and the UN involved? Is that what they really would like? Because it sounds like Israel with Iran. Why do these people want to fight folks that they can't beat up by themselves? They need the United States to step in. And then an ass whooping is going to happen. But it's going to be on a scale that is not easy to stomach for most of us. So why should we go down that path? Why do we have these folks who leech off of us like that? And why do our politicians think all our tax money and all of everything else that we pour into this country through our jobs and our dedication and being good citizens here are all for nothing? You guys still do what you want to do. Take our, how do you know, and is it that necessary to be such a militarily driven country when we could scale it back significantly so that we don't have to be so involved in the world's conflicts and every little speed bump? Because it's a big world, and for a country to take on that voluntarily only limits the amount of time that it will be able to be the world superpower. No one can hold that spot by ruling with an iron fist. If you don't have coalitions and cooperation, you don't have a chance at holding anything together. And that's just the way it is. But people don't want to accept that because we have been ruling with an iron fist for such a long time. People just like that comfort level and don't understand that it could be a whole lot more relaxed if it was a cooperative situation as opposed to a forced one. And because once you're unable to force anything on people, there is no reason for them to sit down and talk to you anymore. It's good to be able to sit down and talk to people who you're way, way, way stronger than and who you're way, way, way weaker than, in a lot of different ways, and to be thankful that they'd be willing to sit down and talk to you. And as a superpower, sit down and talk to people without the threats, without the absolutes, without telling somebody you and your country is going to do this. That's your negotiation. And then they say, oh, no, we don't like that part, because you go, oh, well, you're bad then, because that's our plan. And they just said our way or the highway. And we spend 2 months going over the fact that we're not budging, and everything that we come up with just ain't going to line up with what you want to do with your country. So missiles start flying. Nah, that's not a negotiation. We can do better.
That it might not have been there. He insists it was. Remember, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was asked over the weekend by Face the Nation's Margaret Brennan whether or not the U.S. was certain it was all there. His response was, we don't see how they could have possibly moved it in time and where they would have moved it to, because Iran is under such heavy surveillance by the Israelis and the Americans that any attempt to move something out of those facilities would have been seen and possibly dealt with sooner.
That's exactly what Netanyahu knows, and Trump. Had anything been moved, they would have knew it, or they would have been suspicious of it. And not only because things are heating up now, those facilities are constantly being monitored. And they probably always seen a lot of activity. They probably seen all kind of things and work and vehicles and personnel going in and out of those facilities. But were they going in and out of those facilities, and were they active for the purpose of making military grade weapons? Or were they using their nuclear experience, scientists, technology to advance their country in a non-threatening way to other people? We're going to be able to know this if anybody wants to know this. Someone has to have information as to what happened here so that Israel and countries like them and the United States and countries like them can't just go bombing and blowing up folks and not explaining why you did it. Why couldn't more talks have happened, as opposed to lives and property and money being lost and resources before you get to that? You cannot be that impatient. We already know Israel is. We already know Netanyahu, how he going to roll with it. That's why we've always had a president out front slowing him down and saying, no, we're not doing that. And there's nothing he can do but be frustrated. Trump should be ashamed of himself for this one. I thought he would have been the president out of all of them to say no and to not do what just happened.
But again, absent independent verification of some sort, it's impossible to know whether all of it was destroyed.
Yeah, and Ed, it's important to note you're in the Netherlands, where President Trump and his NATO counterparts will gather for a summit. So what's on the table, and what does the president hope to get out of it?
Well, we are still expecting him to leave early tomorrow morning Washington time and get here in time for dinner for meetings with leaders of the military alliance. The big item on the agenda is going to be an agreement amongst the member nations to increase their defense spending to about 5% of their GDP. That would be actual military equipment and personnel, plus the infrastructure that's needed to support that. So roads, bridges, ports, airports, and other infrastructure that might be built in the country to support its military. The goal has been one of the president's since his first term, when he started berating NATO member nations for not paying more into the alliance so that the United States could start reducing its commitments. Only since his election last year and amid the war in Ukraine have several other member nations conceded it's time to start getting to as close to 5% GDP as possible. We don't know all the details, but the hope is to have most of those countries paying that much soon, so that they boost their defense spending, and in at least the view of the president, they can back off American forces and equipment here. The NATO Secretary General basically telling member nations, you've got about 5 years to start spending that much money on your own defense, because it could take Russia that long to prepare for a major war across Europe.
Ed O'Keefe. Ed, thank you so much.
Oh, man, the United States, it's a trip how nothing really changes to the point of how we are in the United States act like, oh my God, things have swung so far to the left or so far to the right. And I would say safely in the last, with a couple of presidents, and that would be Reagan and Trump, who really made a change in the Republican Party that drew some daylight between them and the Democrats, in my opinion. I thought they were presidents who really have, in Trump and in Reagan, had agendas that I saw some separation there. But it still is the duopoly. And even if Trump, full steams ahead as far as he can go and is as destructive as the Democrats have been telling us he's going to be, he only got 3.5 years left to do it. It's only so much he can do. And any of these executive orders that he is enacting can be undone by an executive order. And it's shocking to me that he was such a horrible president his first time, according to the Democrats. And when Biden get in, what did he do? Did he take every executive order that Trump made and nullify them and reverse them? No, he didn't. So they weren't all that bad. I mean, you can't pick and choose and then bad talk the guy like he's a complete idiot. If everything he did was wrong, then he is a complete idiot. But if he did some things that you find yourself agreeing with, or that if you take away, your constituents might get mad, that's our problem here, guys. We keep pretending that we're farther apart than we really are. And not only from each other, but from the rest of the world. Imagine knowing in your heart, or at least in your best intelligence, that a country really isn't showing that they're trying to make military grade nuclear weapons or planning an attack on your ally in the region. You know in your heart, but you still go down that path to the point of where you lob a couple of missiles as if, you want to test them out. You want to scare the people over there, whatever your reason is. But it's not because you really believe that there's a threat. But you came up with another reason for lobbing those bombs over there. Is that how we should be in our position in the world as the world leader, the world superpower? And all we think about is bomb, power, and negotiations that aren't really negotiations. It's the direction the United States want to go. If we miss a meeting and other world nations get together and make a plan, and then the United States hears of it and comes in later on and say, oh, hell nah, we're not doing that. Meaning the world had to reconsider and get back together. And then when we come out of the meeting, then we'll find out what the United States wanted. And it's hard for even people who oppose the United States to not have to live under a system in the world set up by the United States. And before that, England and Great Britain, just like the United States, it's not very much different of a handoff from Great Britain to the United States. And the United States is carrying on in those type of imperialistic ways, as opposed to taking on a different type of relationship with the world. And it should be a relationship that is not so dominant, not so forceful, and not so distrustful. Whereas if you don't make sure for certain that this is going to go this way, they're going to double cross you, or they're going to try to lie to you or trick you, or, and you would think with the world's resources and wonderful places to go and visit and just people of the world in general, not making some people appear to be smarter than others, or some people appear to be kinder or more loving or have better intelligence, just to accept people for what they are and stop trying to extinguish life just to get a point across, to accept it as more sacred than what we're doing here on this planet, and to stop arguing over a president who is completely able to be manipulated that easily by Netanyahu. Netanyahu just came along and gave him the spiel, and that was it. He's like, oh, yeah, okay. And he got to seem strong, and as soon as it really hit him, I think it was too late. And that's why he's frustrated on the news saying F words. But hey, we got to control ourselves, and we can't be reacting to this stuff. We can't, none of this stuff. In the next few videos that I got coming up, we're going to start talking about our power, the strength that we have, and how to use it, and how to speak up when we're not speaking up. How we are allowing this stuff that makes no sense to continue to make no sense, and not to keep repeating and regurgitating what we've been taught that we know don't work. But we just not willing to go further than where we've been. we feel that we mastered our past, so we don't want to go away from it, but we haven't mastered our past. We've lived through it, and we probably have a pretty good understanding of it, but we ain't mastered shit. And we need to do better going into the future and open ourselves up to some change and quit doing those same things that we've been doing. Because that's the problem with the United States. They keep playing that same record again, and it's getting old. We need a new record. We need a new way to go. With that, like, comment, share, and please subscribe. Like this video. And if you have ever watched Black Popcorn before, subscribe so you can watch again. We'll see you on the next video.